Good afternoon. My name is Bill Mahoney, and I am with NYPIRG, the New York Public Interest Research Group. Thank you for hosting this afternoon. We're all very happy that you're taking on this important issue. I'd like to start off my testimony by talking about how urgent of an issue this is to deal with. There's plenty of deadlines that people may have heard tossed around, but to make this a fair, open, and transparent process, we need to get started with an independent commission very soon. Governor Cuomo's bill, for example, calls on, in years ending in 10, to have the names of the people eligible to serve on the independent commission named by March 1st. That was 15 months ago now. Granted, he makes an exception for this year's redistricting process, but the further we wait, the further we get past the ideal deadline of when we need to start selecting these members who would be best to serve on this commission. It also requires that in years ending in 11, such as 2011, a draft plan must be provided to the public by March 15th, which is 3 months ago. This date is pushed back to September 15th for this year, but if we wait until next session to deal with this process, then there's no way we'll ever see a draft plan available to the public by then. Even if we wait another month, it won't be possible probably to get this done. So this is something that should be dealt with this session and not pushed further down the road. Finally, a month after this draft plan is submitted, they've got to have a number of public hearings, and the legislator has to take a vote on it by May 15th in most years, but in October 15th in this year, which once again is a date that's approaching much quicker than most of us may assume. It's 4 months away. You'll see on page 2 of our testimony, we've got a chart breaking down the population variance in districts. There's currently 193 districts that are more than 1% different from the ideal. That would be corrected by Governor Cuomo's bill and most other bills that have been introduced to deal with this problem. One thing I would like to point out about this is that back in the 60s and 70s, when a lot of new mapping technology was becoming available, people presumed that this problem would go away since it would be easier to draw districts that have no population variance. Instead, this has actually exacerbated the problem, while legislators throughout the country have used this mapping technology to better draw the districts to benefit themselves and ignore the population variances that currently exist. I'd like to wrap up by pointing out a few of the criticisms that people who are in favor of the status quo have lobbed at the plans for an independent commission, and hopefully rebutting them in your eyes. The first one is several people have claimed that it's unconstitutional to come out with an independent redistricting plan like Governor Cuomo has proposed. Dick talked to that issue, so I won't reiterate what he said, but we all know that there have been several legal opinions saying that what Governor Cuomo and other legislators have proposed is just fine. Secondly, other people have claimed that this will harm upstate if we take redistricting out of the hands of the legislature and give it to an independent commission. It might negatively impact various upstate communities. I would like to point out that 18 of the most underrepresented districts in the state are found in upstate, in the assembly especially, but those areas all have much more people living in the districts than they ideally should have, and all of those are harmed under the current system and in theory would be fixed under an independent commission. Also, the newest census numbers indicate that for the first time since the presidency of Andrew Jackson, the ratio of downstate to upstate congressional representatives should rise. Even though upstate didn't grow as fast in some parts as New York City and other parts of the state did, the fact that we're losing 2 districts and the Hudson Valley did see strong growth means that we'll actually see more upstate representatives in comparison to downstate than we have in quite some time. If the current system remains in place, they might try to keep some downstate districts intact and draw long tentacly type things into parts of upstate that will thereby negate this gain and keep those districts in New York City. Well, one other thing, a lot of people have said that some of the bizarre shapes that you've shown on the screen so far today, they claim that a lot of those are impossible to draw, or they claim that a lot of those are inevitable if you follow the Voting Rights Act, and that you can't draw fair, square districts if you pay attention to minority populations. A number of people have looked at this problem, and they've all completely rebutted it. Deval Patrick, when he was the editor of the Emory Law Journal, said that a lot of majority white districts are more bizarre than these districts, and it is practically impossible to find one that is of regular shape. And I've got quotes from Justice John Paul Stevens and Stanford University Law School Dean John Hart Eli that all say similar things, that they've examined this problem in detail and found that the Voting Rights Act plays no role whatsoever in the bizarre shape of some of these districts. Finally, I would just like to point out that some of your colleagues have claimed that this is not an issue that the public cares about. They've pointed to a few polls, such as the Siena poll that came out in April 11th, that found that this was the most important issue for only 8% of New Yorkers. And they claim that that should not be an urgent issue to deal with then, because only 8% of the people of the state care about this. Personally, I think that's a sign that people are very passionate about this issue. It came in 5th place compared to things like the property tax cap, legalizing gay marriage, and the extension of rent control. But the fact to me that 8% of the people are willing to say that this dry, arcane issue of taking the most boring parts of cartography and political science, they find this more important than things that impact them directly economically and on the home front. And that's a very encouraging number to me. If you look at some of the polls that say, do you support independent redistricting? The vast majority of New Yorkers say yes, they do. And I do think that the people who think that New Yorkers don't care about this issue are sadly mistaken. That will be all.
Thank you very much.